Hey folks. Okay, so yesterday I was really struggling because I found a problem with the plot, but I think I've figured out a good solution. So I want to hear your feedback on this as a solution. Here's how it's going to go down. So when Zess goes to find out where the room that holds the rebellion's weapon, where that room is relative to above ground, because it's underground. She counts her paces, whatever, when she's underground. Then she comes up above ground. She counts her paces again. She's like, I think it's around here. And then she has this idea, like, I'm not sure, maybe it's not around here. So she has this idea that maybe she could combine the power of the sun along with the amulet that she has and make the ground invisible, just a small area of the ground, so she can see directly into the room. And with that, and so by the way, the ground, like that separates the top, like the space between the road and the ceiling of the underground, kind of is like, I don't know, about from these doorknobs to my floor. Okay, so maybe a little bit bigger than that, but I'm not sure whether that really works. I think they'll probably maybe I'll have them use glass to make it more solid or something. But anyway, it's pretty deep, but not super deep ground. So she sees through this and finds exactly the dimensions of the room and everything. And yeah, so then when she comes back, she says, "Okay, here's what I found out. Oh, and I was able to like actually see the room, so I know exactly where it is." And they have this idea that Garrett, who has been studying space displacement, because he can see the inside of the room, he can displace himself with a chair. So she makes it invisible. He displaces himself with a chair, and then he um, they find one of the ventilation holes. They're not really shafts; they're like holes in the ground. And one of them just, they go up to the base of the well, or they go up to the base of a building, or whatever. They look like rat holes. So they're like this big, maybe a little bit bigger. So he goes down, he finds one of those ventilation holes, and they dig it to be a little bit bigger. So they bring something to kind of scrape it to be a little bit bigger. And then they lower a bucket. So now the hole is about like this big. So it's still pretty small. But they get a small bucket or like a cup or something, and they lower it down. He puts these amulets into that cup, and they pull it out, and they put it into like a wagon or something. And so it takes a long time, but they're going to do this at night. So they use the amulet to power the displacement. They don't need a whole lot of displacement because displacement energy, just a big powerful burst of it, so that Zest can make the ground invisible, and Garrett, who is still pretty inexperienced, can displace himself with the chair. So they use that burst of the Burkhal's amulet to give them the displacement energy they need. So, but once they are interacting with the metal, they can't use displacement anyway. So he gets all the cups up there, and then with the last burst of the amulet's displacement power, he gets back out. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe they run out of power. That would be interesting. And so he has to find a way to get out of there. But anyway, they have all of the stuff now, and they get a barge. Lord Talmar has nice resources. They get a barge. They put all the stuff on the barge, and so the way that the river comes into the city, so it comes in, it goes into the middle of the city, and then around a little bit, and then out between the border of the first and the second octant. And the second octant is Talmari's octant, or Lord Talmar's octant. So they come in, they go around a little bit on the inside of the city, then they go out, and then they come in a little bit, or they go all the way on the border of Talmar's octant, and then they come in, and then they go out and go around and come in, and they zigzag all the way through the city. So it's actually quite a while. It takes them a long time, it takes them all night. that they're riding this barge and just hoping that nobody notices. Well, the rebellion is mostly just in Telmar's Octon anyway, and so once they get out of Telmar's Octon, it's they should be okay. But yeah, so they're riding this barge with all of this stuff. They get to the end of it, and normally, when the barge gets to the end, like this is a very common mode of travel of getting resources in the city, is using these barges. So normally, when a barge gets to the end, they've got so like because the way the city works to make the river flow that way, it's actually like a spiral downward. So by the time they get to the last part of the city, they have to displace the barge. They get like 12 space displacers, and they displace the barge up to the top of the cliff, and now the space displacers are at the bottom of the cliff. They have to climb up. So they take that barge and they keep sailing out of the city, which nobody ever does. That's like those barges that the space displacers move at the end of the day or whatever. That's as far as anybody ever gets out of the city. So they continue out of the city. They get as far as they dare, and then they just leave the barge to let it go on its merry way. And the metal is all gone. So I think that's how it's going to work. One thing that occurred to me as I was thinking about that is maybe instead of having to ride the barge all the way through the city, which would take a very long time, because it's at night, they could probably just get a lighthound carriage and ride the lighthound carriage to the cliff, and then cart it down the cliff themselves and take a barge and let it go. So that might be a little bit better. But I would love to get your feedback on this. I think this is a good idea, but I just want to make sure that there aren't any holes, or, well, there literally are holes. They're getting the stuff out of holes. One other thing that I should mention is there are about 300 of the Rebellion's amulets, and so it's going to take a little while to get all of those amulets out of there. But it's nighttime. There will be a guard on the outside of the door. Probably just one. Another thing that I'm kind of thinking about is like, okay, if they're gonna dig that hole to make it bigger, like how do they make sure that the guard can't hear them? So there are a couple of these other things I need to still work out. But your feedback is super valuable and helpful. Let me know what you think, and